The crystalline dome of the convergence hall shimmered under twin suns, casting rainbow fractals across the assembled crowd. I stood at the entrance, my palms sweating despite the climate-controlled air. This was it, the 127th triennial courtship trial, and I'd volunteered. "You're insane, Kira," my best friend had said when I submitted my application. "People spend years preparing for this. You're going in blind." But that was exactly the point. As a xenoanthropologist, I'd studied these ceremonies for a decade through sterile academic texts. Now I wanted to understand them from the inside, to feel what candidates felt when faced with choosing a mate from each of humanity's allied species. The doors opened with a soft hiss, revealing the grand chamber. Tiered seating rose on all sides, packed with humans, Etheri, and Caliph observers. At the center, 3 platforms awaited, one for each species representative. "Candidate Kira Ashton," announced the arbiter, a stern human woman in ceremonial robes. "You understand the terms of the trial? 7 days to interact with your potential mates. On the final evening, you must announce your choice. The bond you form will represent the harmony between our species for the next century." No pressure, I thought, climbing the central dais. That's when I saw them. On the left platform stood an Etheri male, his wings folded elegantly against his back. The feathers shifted through colors, deep purple to silver to something that looked like captured starlight. His angular features held an expression of serene curiosity, and when our eyes met, I felt a jolt of recognition. There was intelligence there, and something else. Mystery. The middle platform held the human representative, a man whose presence filled the space without effort. Dark hair fell to his shoulders, and his eyes held both warmth and challenge. He wore simple clothes that somehow made him more striking than if he'd been dressed in ceremony. When he smiled at me, it was knowing, almost conspiratorial, as if we shared a secret. On the right platform, a Caliph female emerged from the shallow pool that accommodated her species' amphibious nature. Her skin held an iridescent sheen, jade green flowing into coral pink across her shoulders and arms. Delicate gills fluttered at her neck, and her large, expressive eyes studied me with playful intensity. She moved with liquid grace, each gesture seeming like an invitation. "Let the trial commence," the arbiter declared. The crowd erupted in ceremonial cheers. I barely heard them. My heart hammered as I realized I'd stepped into something far more complex than research. These weren't specimens to study, they were individuals, each radiating an energy that called to different parts of me. The Etheri's wings rustled softly, catching light. The human male's gaze held steady, patient. The Caliph female smiled, revealing the subtle point of her teeth. 7 days. 3 choices. One decision that would change everything. I just didn't know yet that the change would be nothing like anyone expected. The first 3 days passed in a blur of structured activities designed to foster connection. Each morning, I spent private time with one representative, cycling through all 3 over elaborate meals and cultural exchanges. "Tell me, Kira," said Theron, the Etheri, during our 3rd morning together. We sat in a sky garden, surrounded by floating plants that responded to air currents from his wings. "Why does your heartbeat quicken when you lie?" I nearly choked on my tea. "Excuse me? Your physiology betrays you." His head tilted, those color-shifting feathers rippling with amusement. "When the arbiter asked if you sought love in this trial, your pulse spiked. You said yes, but your body said no. Heat crept up my neck. You can hear my heartbeat? Etheri senses are quite acute." He leaned closer, and I caught his scent, something like ozone and mountain air. "I don't judge deception, Kira. I'm simply curious about your truth." Before I could answer, his wing extended slightly, feathers brushing my shoulder. The touch sent electricity through my skin. His eyes darkened to deep violet. "Fascinating," he murmured. "Your body responds to mine, even as your mind constructs barriers." I should have pulled away. Instead, I found myself leaning in, drawn by the alien beauty of him, the intelligence that saw through every defense. Maybe, I whispered, I came here looking for something I couldn't name. His wing curved around me, creating a private cocoon of feathers. Then perhaps we're searching for the same thing. The human representative, Jackson, proved equally disarming in entirely different ways. Stop thinking so hard, he said on the fourth afternoon. We'd been given free time, and he'd suggested a walk through the garden maze, a traditional human courting ground. I can literally see the gears turning in that brilliant head of yours. Is that what you think? I asked, navigating a turn. That I'm brilliant? I think you're terrified. He caught my hand, pulling me to face him. You came here expecting a cultural experiment, and instead you're discovering you're human after all. His thumb traced circles on my palm, such a simple touch, yet it anchored me in a way I hadn't expected. There was something grounding about Jackson, something that made the chaos of the trial feel manageable. What if I don't want to choose? The words escaped before I could stop them. Jackson's expression softened. He lifted our joined hands, pressing my palm against his chest where I could feel his heartbeat, steady, sure. Then don't, he said simply. But don't hide from whatever you're feeling either. That's not research, Kira. That's cowardice. The challenge in his words stung, but he was right. I'd been cataloging feelings instead of feeling them. When he pulled me closer, I didn't resist. His kiss was warm, insistent, tasting of the fruit wine we'd shared earlier. My hands fisted in his shirt, and for a moment, I forgot about the trial, the observers, everything except the solid reality of him. When we broke apart, both breathless, he smiled. There. That wasn't so terrifying, was it? Seraphine, the Caliph representative, ambushed me on the fifth evening. You've been avoiding me, she said, rising from her pool in my private quarters. Apparently, Caliph had different concepts of boundaries. I haven't. Liar. But she was smiling, her skin shifting to warmer tones. You fear me most because I represent the unknown. The truly alien. She moved closer, water streaming down her form. May I touch you? I nodded, barely breathing. Her fingers traced my collarbone, the webbing between them delicate against my skin. Her touch was cool, soothing, yet it ignited something primal. She leaned in, and I felt the flutter of her gills against my neck, intimate, strange, intoxicating. You taste like confusion, she murmured. Like desire fighting duty. I find it compelling. When her lips met mine, they were soft, carrying the faint salt of her aquatic nature. The kiss deepened, and I found myself responding with an intensity that shocked me. She read my body's responses with the same precision Theron had, adjusting her touch to draw out pleasure I hadn't known I could feel. Choose truth, Kira, she whispered against my ear. Not tradition. The sixth day dawned with growing tension. Tomorrow was the choice ceremony, and I was no closer to a decision. Worse, I'd grown genuinely attached to all three representatives, not as research subjects, but as individuals who'd shown me different facets of connection. The morning brought an unexpected summons from the Arbiter Council. Candidate Ashton, the head arbiter, began, her expression grave. Reports suggest you've been overly familiar with all three representatives. This trial is meant to determine your choice, not to indulge in promiscuity. My jaw tightened. I thought the purpose was to foster genuine connection. Connection that leads to selection, another arbiter interjected, a severe ethery male whose wings were permanently folded in disapproval. You formed physical bonds with all three. This shows disrespect for the sanctity of the process. Or, I countered, feeling anger rise, it shows that genuine connection doesn't follow prescribed rules. The Caliph arbiter rippled her skin in what I'd learned was agitation. The courtship trial has maintained peace for 5 generations. It works because participants honor the structure. You threaten to undermine centuries of tradition. By connecting with people? I couldn't keep the frustration from my voice. By treating them as individuals rather than representatives? By refusing to choose, the head arbiter said coldly. You will make your selection tomorrow, Candidate Ashton. Or you will be removed from the trial in disgrace, and your species' reputation will suffer the consequences. That afternoon, I met with Theron in his quarters. The ethery architecture was all soaring spaces and natural light, designed for beings who could fly. They threatened you, he said without preamble. His feathers had darkened to storm gray. How did you? Your posture. Your scent. He moved toward me, wings partially extended. You're preparing for battle. I sagged against the window ledge, suddenly exhausted. I don't know what to do, Theron. I care about all of you. Choosing one means losing the others, and that feels wrong. But not choosing might destroy the alliance. He was quiet for a moment, then did something unexpected. His wings enfolded me completely, creating a private world of feathers and filtered light. My people have a saying, he murmured, his breath warm against my temple. The flock flies together, or not at all. Perhaps your instinct is wiser than their tradition. His hand cupped my face, thumb tracing my cheekbone. When I looked up, his eyes had shifted to a color I'd never seen before, something between gold and amber, rich with emotion. Choose what feels true, Kira. Not what feels safe. When he kissed me, it was different from before, deeper, more vulnerable. His wings trembled against my back, and I realized he was just as affected as I was, just as conflicted. We sank to the cushioned floor, his wings creating a canopy above us as hands explored, as barriers dissolved. Later, wrapped in his wings and the growing darkness, he said quietly, whatever you choose tomorrow, you've changed me. That matters more than any ceremony. That evening, Jackson found me in the garden maze, sitting on a stone bench and staring at nothing. Hiding? He asked, settling beside me. Thinking. Same thing for you. He took my hand, lacing our fingers together. The arbiters got to you. I nodded. They want compliance. But compliance feels like betrayal now. Jackson was quiet, then said, you know what I love about you, Kira? You question everything. You don't accept because that's how it's done as an answer. He turned to face me fully. So why start now? Because the consequences are only scary if you're alone. He kissed my knuckles. But you're not alone. Theron told me what he said to you. And Seraphine, she's been preparing something too. My heart raced. What do you mean? I mean all three of us have been talking, Kira. About you. About this trial. About what we want. His smile was both tender and mischievous. You're not the only one questioning tradition. He pulled me close, and I went willingly, needing the solid comfort of him. We kissed beneath the twin moons, his hands tangling in my hair, my fingers tracing the muscles of his back. It was passionate but also grounding, a reminder that whatever choice I made, there were people who saw me, truly saw me, and valued what they found. Trust yourself, he whispered. Trust us. The seventh morning arrived too quickly. I woke in my quarters alone, but the sheets still carried the scent of the night before, when Seraphine had slipped in through the private pool entrance, bringing with her a plan that was either brilliant or completely insane. The others agree? I'd asked as we lay tangled together, her cool skin against mine. Theron and Jackson both understand, she'd said, her webbed fingers tracing patterns on my stomach. This trial has always been about control, Kira. About keeping each species in predictable patterns. But you've done something unprecedented, you've shown us we don't have to follow the script. She'd kissed me then, slow and deep, and I'd tasted her determination along with desire. Tomorrow, we give them a choice they never imagined. Now, as I prepared for the final ceremony, my hands shook while fastening the ceremonial robe. In a few hours, I would stand before thousands and either conform to centuries of tradition or shatter it completely. A knock at the door startled me. Jackson entered, dressed in his own ceremonial attire, simple but elegant, so perfectly him. "Ready to change the world?" he asked with that crooked smile. Terrified, I admitted. He crossed to me, adjusting my collar with gentle hands. "Good. Means you understand what's at stake." His fingers lingered at my throat. "But we're in this together, remember? All four of us." The door opened again, and Theron glided in, his wings catching the morning light in spectacular fashion. Behind him, Seraphine emerged from the pool access, her skin showing patterns I'd learned meant excitement. "The Arbiters are already assembling," Theron said. "As is most of the planet, remotely. This trial is being broadcast to all 3 species' homeworlds." My stomach dropped. Oh God, I didn't think. About billions watching? Seraphine's laugh was musical. "Too late to back out now, beloved." The casual endearment from her lips sent warmth through my chest. When had these 3 people become so essential to me? When had their happiness become as important as my own? What if this fails? I asked quietly. What if they reject the proposal and exile all of us? Theron's wing extended, brushing my shoulder. "Then we'll be exiled together. I've discovered I prefer your company to my people's approval." Jackson pulled me against him from behind, his chin resting on my shoulder. "Besides, some things are worth fighting for. You've taught me that." Seraphine joined us, her hand finding mine. "The flock flies together," she said, repeating Theron's words from before. "Or not at all." Standing there, surrounded by these 3 incredible beings, I felt something click into place. This was right. Not the trial's prescribed outcome, but this genuine, messy, complicated connection between 4 people who refused to be reduced to symbols. The convergence hall was packed to capacity. I could feel thousands of eyes on me as I took my place on the central dais. Theron, Jackson, and Seraphine stood on their respective platforms, but something had changed. Their positioning was different, they'd angled themselves to face both me and each other, creating a circle rather than a hierarchy. The head arbiter stepped forward, her expression stern. "Candidate Kira Ashton, you have completed the 7th trial. The time has come for your choice. According to our laws, you must select one mate from each species, bonding yourself to representatives of humanity, Etheri, and Caliph. This bond will symbolize the continued alliance between our peoples." She paused dramatically. "Who do you choose as your human mate?" The hall fell silent. I could hear my own heartbeat, feel the weight of history pressing down. I began, my voice carrying through the amplification system, "to reject the premise of your question." Gasps rippled through the crowd. The arbiter's face darkened. "Candidate Ashton. Let me finish." I kept my voice steady, though my legs trembled. "This trial claims to be about connection, about fostering bonds between species. But it's really about control. About forcing individuals into prescribed roles to maintain a political structure." I turned slowly, meeting eyes throughout the audience. "I came here thinking I could observe your traditions objectively. Instead, I learned something crucial: genuine connection cannot be mandated. Love cannot be scripted." Murmurs grew louder. I pressed on. "Over these 7 days, I've formed deep connections with all 3 representatives. Not because tradition demanded it, but because they're extraordinary individuals." Theron challenged me to seek truth over comfort. Jackson taught me that vulnerability is strength. Seraphine showed me that the unknown can be a gift rather than a threat. Theron's wings flared slightly, his sign of support. Jackson's steady gaze anchored me. Seraphine's skin rippled with colors that meant pride. "So no, I will not choose just one from each species. I choose all three, or I choose none. Because they deserve to be seen as people, not as symbols. And any alliance worth having should be built on truth, not coercion. The silence that followed my declaration was deafening. Then chaos erupted, shouting from the arbiters, excited chatter from younger audience members, outraged cries from traditionalists. Through it all, I stood frozen on the dais, suddenly uncertain if I'd just started a revolution or destroyed everything. The head arbiter's voice cut through the noise like a blade. This is an outrage. You spit on centuries of tradition, on the very foundation of our alliance. Does she? A new voice rang out, ancient and resonant. An elderly ethery rose from the upper tiers, wings that had faded to silver spreading wide. Or does she speak a truth we've been too comfortable to acknowledge? Elder Kairos, the arbiter said, surprise flickering across her face. Surely you cannot support this rebellion? I support honesty. The elder glided down to the main floor, and I realized with shock that he was one of the founding architects of the trial system. When we created these ceremonies, we believed we were fostering peace. But perhaps we've been fostering theater instead. A Caliph matriarch surfaced from the ceremonial pools. My people have long questioned whether forced connections truly serve our interests. Perhaps this young human has the courage to voice what many have felt. This is madness, another arbiter protested. If we abandon the trial system, what maintains the alliance? Maybe, Jackson said, stepping forward from his platform, the alliance doesn't need maintaining. Maybe it needs evolving. He moved to stand beside me, his hand finding mine. The contact sent strength flowing between us. Theron glided down next, his wings creating a gentle wind. Kira has shown us that connection transcends prescribed roles. She's formed genuine bonds with all three of us, not because she had to, but because she chose to. Isn't choice the foundation of any true partnership? Seraphine emerged from her pool, water streaming from her iridescent skin. The Caliph have a saying, rigid reefs break in the storm, but flexible coral survives. Perhaps it's time we became flexible. The three of them stood with me now, forming a united front. I felt the rightness of it in my bones. This wasn't about rejecting alliance, but reimagining what alliance could mean. I propose, I said, my voice stronger now, a new framework. One where individuals choose their connections freely, where bonds are formed from genuine attraction and respect rather than political necessity. The trial can remain as an option for those who wish it, but not as a mandate. Elder Kairos's eyes glittered with something like amusement. And what have you for? How do you propose to structure this unconventional arrangement? I looked at Theron, Jackson, and Seraphine. We discussed this in the pre-dawn hours, mapping possibilities. We propose a partnership, Theron said. For individuals who've chosen each other, not as representatives of species, but as people. We'll live together, work together, and yes, love together. Our bond will demonstrate what's possible when choice replaces coercion. Polyamory between species, an arbiter sputtered. Unheard of. Unheard of isn't the same as impossible, Jackson countered. Every advancement in our alliance was unheard of once. The first human ethery diplomatic mission. The first Caliph colony in a desert climate. Change is how we've survived. The hall erupted in debate again. Some voices supported us, others condemned. But something had shifted, the conversation itself had changed from whether I would comply to whether the system itself needed revision. Hours later, after emergency councils and heated arguments, a compromise emerged. I would not be forced to choose according to traditional rules, but I would serve a 5-year term as a relationship ambassador, documenting our unconventional arrangement and its impact on interspecies understanding. If we succeeded, the trial system would be reformed to allow more flexibility. So we're a political experiment after all, I said that evening. We'd retreated to a private residence, a space designed to accommodate all four of us, with high ceilings for Theron's wings, a central pool for Seraphine, and comfortable human-scale furnishings. We were always an experiment, Seraphine said, lounging half in her pool. The difference is now we're running it ourselves. Jackson poured wine for those who could drink it, then settled on the couch beside me. 5 years. Think we can tolerate each other that long? Theron landed gracefully on my other side, wings folding. Given that I find you all inexplicably fascinating, I believe we'll manage. His wing draped across my shoulders, and I leaned into the gesture. Jackson's hand found my knee. Seraphine watched from the pool, her expression warm. This won't be easy, I said quietly. 4 people, 3 species, countless differences to navigate. Nothing worthwhile is easy, Jackson replied. He cupped my face, turning me toward him. But I'd rather fight for something real than coast on something prescribed. When he kissed me, Theron's wing tightened around us both, not possessive, but inclusive. Seraphine rose from the pool, water cascading, and joined us on the couch. New rule, she announced. No one sleeps alone unless they choose to. Agreed, Theron said softly, his free wing extending to draw Seraphine closer. We sat there in a tangle of limbs, wings, and interspecies warmth, and I realized this was what I'd been searching for all along. Not a mate from each species to fulfill tradition, but a family built on choice, on genuine connection, on the brave decision to love without prescribed boundaries. Outside, twin moons rose over the city where 3 species had learned to coexist. Inside, for individuals who'd shocked the world by choosing each other began the real work of building something that had never existed before. To new beginnings, Jackson said, raising his glass. To choosing truth, Theron added. To flexible coral, Seraphine said with a laugh. To us, I finished. However unconventional we are. Our glasses clinked, and in that moment, I knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, we'd face them together. Not because tradition demanded it, not because politics required it, but because we'd chosen each other, freely, genuinely, and with eyes wide open to all the beautiful complexity that choice entailed. The courtship trial had ended. Our real adventure was just beginning. Epilogue, 3 years later. The documentary crew waited patiently as Seraphine adjusted the lights. After 3 years, we'd gotten used to the periodic check-ins, the public's fascination with our radical experiment. How would you describe your relationship now? The interviewer asked. Jackson and I exchanged glances. Theron's wing rustled with amusement. Complicated, I said honestly. But worth every complication. We've had to invent our own language for what we are, Theron added. Your human terms like polyamory approach it, but don't quite capture the interspecies elements. We fight, Seraphine said cheerfully. Different communication styles, different needs. But we also support each other in ways none of us expected. The interviewer leaned forward. And the impact on the trial system? Some call you revolutionaries. We're just 4 people who refuse to fit a mold, Jackson said. If that's revolutionary, maybe the mold needed breaking. After the crew left, we gathered on our shared terrace, watching the sunset paint the sky in familiar colors. Do you regret it? I asked. Any of it? Never, Theron said immediately. Not once, Jackson agreed. Well, Seraphine said thoughtfully, maybe that time you all tried to cook Caliph cuisine. That was regrettable. We laughed, and the sound echoed across the city where more and more people were questioning old rules, forging new connections, choosing love over tradition. The courtship trial still existed, but now it was truly optional. And increasingly, participants were choosing their own unconventional paths. We'd shocked the world by choosing none of the prescribed options. 3 years later, we'd proven that sometimes the bravest choice is the one no one offers you, the choice to write your own story, regardless of how unconventional it might be. Claude is AI and can make mistakes. Please double-check responses. Sonnet 4.5